Okay, so I'm going to be talking about social and personality development in infancy. So scientists researched variables that influence an infant and toddler's social and personality development. In the articles, they assessed long-term effects of such personality and social differences and how certain parenting styles early on during infancy impact their development. So first I read a rather interesting article actually on psychological processes. It explains that basically all people show patterns of either making it in the world around them by adapting to it or not. I like to think resiliency here. You could also compare this to when Piaget talks about accommodating and assimilating. So infants who seem to have mastered a task exist, as well as those who act helpless. Adults do that too every day. Some people are lazy and can't do anything for themselves, while others are real go-getters, and they are goal setting. It describes how an infant sees a cause and effect pattern and how that relates to how people set goals for themselves. The article goes further than infancy in stating that the individual goals we have impact our personality. I would most definitely say so. The things you want to be in your life impact the way that you make your decisions and what kind of choices you make. Someone who wants to be a president would probably not commit a felony. Okay, so now we are getting into a bit of how infant brains are built. These researchers studied how an infant responds to stress, like how things they are subjected to and their responses impact the developing of their brain. Also, their communication with, say, their parents, and the effects, the strengths, or weaknesses of that relationship impacts mental health. The limbic system is your nerves and networks in your brain, mostly associated with instinct and mood. It tries its best to adapt to a person's ever-changing environment. And during infancy, your environment is all new. So you can imagine it's like an explosion of your senses. Your limbic system would be quite at work then. But an infant's caregiver has a large role in helping to regulate that limbic system by their relationship or lack thereof with their child. By expanding a child's coping capabilities or resiliency, a person increases his chance of survival in that ever-changing environment. I just wanted to prompt at an end with the thought process of asking what some of the pros and cons of a strong attachment would be. Okay, so parent influence. The attachment theory in a nutshell states that the more secure a relationship between parent and infant reflects when a child starts making relationships and throughout their entire lifespan with relations. This theory was analyzed through 63 studies where the correlations between child-parent attachment and the child's other relations were tested. I would say effects were more predominant because mid-childhood hosts more complex relationships than those in infancy. Mother-child attachment gave moderate results, whereas father attachment was inconclusive, making my question be if it has something to do with chemicals, like that maternal instinct versus paternal instinct. People are very different with how they regulate their emotions. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't see depression, bipolar disorder, or the super common anxiety disorder. The way we handle our emotions and our reactions to things affect who we are as a person. These researchers talked about how our emotionality predicts how we function socially. As in, a really nervous person, or someone who is really sad, doesn't go to social events, and their development is different than someone who does go out and interact with people on the regular. So how could the infant caregiver have an effect on a person's developing emotionality? Well, say the caregiver is very neglectful, and the infant grows up with thinking that that's how relationships should go, when in reality that's not correct at all. They have a skewed vision of what a relationship between parent and child should be, therefore impacting the rest of their relationships in the future. So, expression processing, or FEP is facial expression processing, is a person's ability to read emotions through facial expressions. facial expressions are different based on gender, and the way we show/read emotion is different based on gender as well. So say an infant is only subjected to females, could that predict, or they're mostly objected to females, so could that predict their relations with men? Would that mean it would be weaker, or their ability to read gender's emotions weaker? And then there's an interesting point about females. Apparently females have an advantage with facial expression processing. So a child's regulating of their learning and intelligence is through obtaining assistance. When they start seeking out help with tasks they can't accomplish themselves, it shows that they have that knowledge that they aren't capable, that they are aware of where they stand, and that they need help to get to where they want to go. And studied mothers, full-term, medically low-risk children, and high-risk preterm children at 5 different ages, 6, 12, 24 months, and 3 to 4 years. It studied the impact a mother's response has on a child's cognitive and social development. So the mother is very responsive, and she responds consistently to the child, meaning that the child is always used to that sort of response system. So my question is, how could an overly attached infant struggle socially? An infant who is overly attached to their mother, would they then have some sort of sense of social anxiety every time that they're out in public? Are they too dependent, as in they lack responsibility and accountability? Those are some things to think about. So let's move on to the conclusion. So we researched influences an infant's environment and families create. They create the basis of their development and how the differences and changes in an environment and relations between caregivers impact an infant's lifelong relationships with not only themselves, as in the way they regulate their emotions, see themselves, but their relationship with peers, how they think relationships should be, their temperament and personality. And the second focus was on the patterns of environmental events and transitions and how an infant copes with them or gains resiliency. So thank you. I hope you learned a little bit.